Hey, welcome back. I'm Andy, and this is my shop, and I'm in the middle of a kitchen makeover project. The makeover project includes some new doors, and we use double-sided machining for those, and I've already done a tutorial video on how to create those files. And now we're in the middle of creating some drawers. The drawers are going to have Isoloc dovetail type joinery to join the front to the sides, the front and back to the sides. And we've already done in the first part of this, we've already done the pin cutouts. Now we're about to create the side panel, which will include the tails for this. So that's the project. Let's get started. I've already done the first step, which is to take the file we did in the last tutorial and just copy it, rename it as tails in the CAD/CAM tutorial. The next thing we're going to do is take a top look. We're going to go back to the 2D drawing view, and there you'll see there's the reminder of what we created and the construction lines and everything we used. And then we created this side panel from that. So the next step is to do a little bit of house cleaning. We really don't need any of these vectors, so I'm just going to highlight them and delete them. And over here in the toolpaths, we have 4 toolpaths that we use to create the pocket, and we don't need those. So I'm just going to right click on that and delete everything that's visible. If I have a check mark, then it's considered visible. So we've got that out of the way. Now we're ready to create the new part. To start a new part, we go to the edit, pull down, drop down, and we're going to go to the job size. And this drawer panel needs to be 21 3/4 inches deep. The height of this is 3 inches, but I'm going to make this 3.5 to give me a little bit of room to work, and the thickness will be 0.75. Now on the pins, we cut that part vertically, and so the material surface was my Z0 position. On this part, we're going to cut it on the machine bed, and we're going to cut it out of sheet goods. So we're going to move that. We're also going to change the XY datum point from the right side corner to the left side corner, which would be more traditional for sheet goods. And now my part is set up. So let's hit OK here. And we'll go back and grab the side vectors that we drew that in the last tutorial. And I'm just going to position it in the middle of my part. Now that it's positioned in the part, we can trim this up or do whatever we need to do to create the toolpaths. The first thing I want to do is I want to modify this so that my tails and pins aren't a 0 fit. I want to have a little bit of space in there. And to do that, I'm going to use my offset tool here. Nope, I'm getting ahead of myself. To do that, I need to break this apart. So right now it's one continuous vector. If I go to the node editing mode and I just click there and then right click, I can go to cut the vector, and that gives me a green dot indicating where I'm at. Now I'm going to break this one by doing the same thing. So I get another green dot, and I'm going to go over here, cut that vector, and do this, and cut that vector. Now, I'm going to take this and do an offset. Okay, now that I've broken the vectors, I have 4 separate vectors. I have one here, one here, one here, and of course one down here. We want to modify the end ones. I'm going to go over here and just go to the regular arrow so I can go back to regular. I'm not node editing anymore, so I'm just back to regular editing. So I highlight this, and I want to make these tails smaller by 0.010 of an inch. I'm going to go to my offset, and I'm going to move 10 thousandths. It's already set up at 10 thousandths. And if I stand here, if I'm looking at the dot where it's the black dot, facing the line, I can see that if I were going to move it this direction, it would be to my left side. So I'm going to put left. And I'm also going to say I'm going to delete the original and select the new one. So there I go. Now, if I zoom in real close, you can see that we moved over 0.010 of an inch. So those tails are now smaller by 10,000ths of an inch. We're going to repeat that here. And standing at that point, looking, we'd be going to the right. So we're going to do that again. There we go. Now this is almost there. I don't want to make my part shorter. I just want to make those tails smaller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move to the end of that line by using my move tool. I'm going to go to the relative position, and in my x-axis I'm going to move 10,000ths. That's good. And over here I need to go a minus 10,000ths because we're going to go the opposite direction. Minus 0.01. Now I have tails that are just slightly smaller. We're going to take these, highlight them all. I'm holding down my shift key, and I'm going to use the join tool, and I'm going to join those together. And now I have one solid vector. We are ready to rock and roll to start creating the rest of the toolpaths. Okay, now I'm going to go up to my layers. Layers, as you'll see as we move along, especially when we get to the little bonus section on how to build an array and transfer your toolpaths, then those are going to become important. So this says Isoloc. I don't want it to be Isoloc anymore. So if I rename this, let's just call this one the tail pocket. Let's take this one and rename this one and call this the bottom panel dado. We're not going to change the construction line, so we don't need to worry about that. And the drawer side is the drawer side. Let's go back and start getting some work done. So I'm going to switch to the tail pocket. And what I want to do is I just want to draw a box around the tails because I want to pocket that down. I have a 3/4 inch piece of material. My pin holes are only, or pin pockets are only a 1/2 inch deep, so we want to take away a 1/4 inch of this material. Now we're going to create the rectangle pocket, and the thing I love about Vectric software, the Aspire software, is see when I hover over that, I get that semi-construction line. When I hold the key down, or my mouse key down, I can just slide here, and I've created that. Now I left this with some corners, some radius corners, and that's just fine. So that will become one of the pockets on the pins. I'm going to come over here and do the same thing, just kind of hover there for a second, and then just move up to the edge of my material, slide down to the bottom corner of my material and let go of the mouse. And now I've got 2 pockets ready to go. So that was pretty easy. Let's go to the bottom dado panel. This is important to make sure we keep everything organized. We're going to create another rectangle here. And this rectangle is going to be 20 3/8 long. I practiced a little bit so the numbers are already hanging in there, and 3/8 wide. Now here I can choose exactly where I want to put it, but I'm not going to worry too much about that because I'll show you how I just move things around. So I'll create that. And by taking this and going to my, let's just stick it in the middle of the part for right now. Now it's all set up and ready to go, other than the vertical situation or vertical position. So from here to here should be 3/8 of an inch. Let's just measure this and see where it actually is. So it's 1.312, 1 5/16. I have the move tool over here, and I could do the fancy math, but I'm lazy. So if I just start here and say I'm going to move this -1, then I'm at 0.312. Now I know I want to be at 0.375, so if I take and add 0.0625 or a 1/16 of an inch to that and move it up, there we go. Then I'm at the right point. At least I think so. Let's double check. Yeah, 375. So that's my little trick. I don't like to grab a calculator and do the calculations. I do what I can in my head and just make small jumps until I get it where I want. Now I'm ready to start making toolpaths. I like to think of this, first of all, in terms of the tools I want to use. To cut this dado, it's 3/8 of an inch wide, and so if I use a 1/4 inch bit and just slide around the inside, I'm going to get a nice clean cut. It'll work fine. I've got 1/4 inch radiuses or 1/8 inch radiuses or a 1/4 inch tool that will cut into this little section here. So a 1/4 inch bit will work fine for my outside profiles as well. But I've got a big pocket to cut away here first, and I think I'll use a 1/2 inch cutter for that. So I'm just going to select both of them while I'm at it by holding down the shift key. You guys know this, but I'm anal, so I'm going to keep saying the things that I need to do. Helps me keep things right. Now, I'm going to go here and I'm going to create a tool path. To do this, I'm going to go inside the line with a bit that is, come on, there we go, a 1/2 inch end mill. Now I'm actually going to use a compression bit for this. And I want this to be 0.25 deep. Again, the remaining part, the part that's sitting down against the table, I want that to be a 1/2 inch thick. So 2.5 deep here. And I'm going to go inside of that line. This is just my own little thing, but I like to use ramps whenever I cut anything. It's a little easier on the tool. And so I'm just going to call this the tail pockets. And I'm going to check my feed rates on this. I usually use this bit for just cutting out big sections of material. So it's running at 300 inches a minute. I'm only traveling 3 inches, so it's going to be a bit too fast for this. So I'm just going to run this down to 150. Now I often change my plunge rate to half of my feed rate, but in this case, I'm going to leave it the same because I'm using that ramped cut. So I don't need to slow down that cut. We're going to hit OK, and then we're going to calculate that. And we'll just preview the selected tool path, and you can see that I've got a nice clean cut. And if I hover over that section down in the bottom right hand corner, it tells you it's 0.5. Now remember, we're working off the base, the bottom edge, so that tells me that's exactly how thick that tail is going to be, a 1/2 inch. That's what I want. I'm all good. So now we're going to go to a 1/4 inch bit, but we're going to use exactly or almost the same tool cut conditions. So we're going to go to get my 1/4 inch bit. I'm going to go 375 deep, and I'm going to cut that. I'm going to be inside the vector. I'm going to also add a ramp, and I'm going to call this the bottom panel dado. And let's just preview that. I like this other view. All right, everything's looking good to me so far. All I need to do is cut the part out now. So if I look at this, go back to these views, I'm going to go to my side, actually outer profile. Now I'll do this in 2 steps. This is something that I was taught by one of the cabinet makers, Mike Smarza. I like this process a lot. So I'm going to go down here and have my offset allowance 30 thousandths. I'm going to change my cut depth to 0.72. So that won't cut all the way through. It'll leave a small onion skin of about 30 thousandths. So I'm going to go down now. I will do some ramps on this again. And I'm going to call this the rough pass on our profile. But here we are, we have the rough pass. We're going to duplicate the rough pass here. When we open this up, we've got a few things to do. The first thing we'll do is we'll rename it. So this is going to be my finish pass. Let's start at the top. We want this to cut through the material. I like about 15 thousandths, gives me a nice clean edge on the bottom. So that's 765. Same bit. Let's look at the speeds. So 250 and 200, that's pretty good. I'll be fine with that, especially where I'm ramping. We're going to come to that in a minute. I don't need to do a separate last pass, but I am going to take this allowance off. So we will have no allowance, so it's going to cut right up against the line with ramps. I am not going to ramp this. What I want these to do on the finish pass is to go straight down in the corner and then cut around. I'm also going to do this. I'm going to add some tabs. Because this is a long, skinny part, there's not much for the vacuum to work with. So I want to be a little careful and put in some tabs. So I'm going to go to edit my tabs over here. And this is the tab I like. This is my format. You can use whatever you want, but about a 1/2 inch of material is fine, no thicker than a 1/10 of an inch. And I use the 3D tab, which means it goes up and then back down as it cuts the tab. So it's a little pyramid. All I need to do here is hit edit tabs and I'll put them in where I want them. All right, now if I cut multiple parts, one will be right above the other, so I don't want them stacked up. They won't be quite as useful if they're right stacked on top of each other. So now we're going to go down, just double check the right depth, no offset, good speed, calculate. And yep, it's giving me the message that we're going to cut all the way through the material. So let's reset and preview all of our toolpaths. There's our tail pockets, there's our dado for the bottom panel, and now it's all cut to size. There you have it. We have completed the part. We could run out and run a prototype. I'm going to go to the drawing view here. And here's one single part. Clearly, I'm not going to make one part for a whole batch of drawers. I have to make 18 drawers, so in the end, I need 36. But let's just make 12 of these right now. So I'm going to go to my job size, and I'm going to change my job size first. So single-sided doesn't change, but the width of this, we'll just put 24 inches. Our height is going to be 48 because I'm going to use the first section of my vacuum table. Still 3/4 of an inch thick, still in inches, still the machine bed, still left-hand corner. Everything's good. Now it's automatically going to recalculate for me, and that's fine. I want to go up to my layers and make sure that everything's on, because if you move things with just one of these off, that part doesn't move. When you're moving stuff, you've got to make sure everything is on if you want it all to move. Now I'm going to use this clever little tool here and move it just to the center. And then I'm going to use my arrow keys to just nudge this up a little bit. Now I'm ready to do the array. The array will let me make 12 parts. I practiced a little bit, so I know I can get 12 parts. And the way I'm going to separate the parts is not using the offset, but the gap. I want 3/10 of an inch gap on all the way around each part. I'm going to have 12 rows, of course, go this way. Columns go up and down. Now there goes our copy. Now we'll reset and preview the toolpath here. We have 12 parts we want to make, so how are we going to get that? So let's see, we could hit tail pocket, and we could go and hold the shift key down and grab each one of these. But the people at Vectric are geniuses, at least I think so compared to me. So if I go to tail pocket, then I just want to make sure that I've clicked this box up here, Show Advanced Toolpath Options. Then I'm going to come down here to the selector, the vector selection. I'm going to hit selector here, and I'm going to get a little box. The box is going to ask me what I want to work with, and I can do open and close vectors. All of my vectors are closed. And then I want to associate this with a tool path. So I'm going to associate here, and then this isn't going to be the drawer side. I'm going to go do all the tail pockets, and you see how they all just went magenta, as if I just went and clicked them all. When I calculate that now, and again, this is why I think these guys are geniuses. There you go. All of my pockets are put in. Let's go do the same thing on the bottom panel. So we're going to go back to my vectors down here, select the vector. We're going to say associate. And make sure you don't have any extras clicked. We just want the bottom panel, and we will calculate that. And we'll preview that. Perfect. We'll go to the rough panel, or the rough pass. We're going to do the same thing. Now we're going to associate with toolpath. This one is the drawer side, and for the next two steps, we're going to associate that with that part. Now this is why I like the vectors inside of layers. It lets me associate each one of these tools with a particular layer. I make them all different colors, so it's easy for me to figure out what's going on. Let's preview that toolpath there. There we're going. Now, finish pass. This project's almost ready to go out and throw a 2-foot by 4-foot panel on my machine and start cutting parts. So let's do our selector, associate that. We've already got the drawer. When we calculate that, it's going to say we're going to cut through. Is that okay with you? And yep, I'm happy with that. Reset. And then we preview all of the selected parts. Okay, there's our preview of all 12 parts. So there's the end of the bonus section of this video, how to take a single part, transfer all the tool paths to an array of parts using the vector selection tools. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you appreciate that little bonus section. I certainly appreciate Aspire and all the hard work they do to give us such a brilliant piece of software to make my life in the shop so much easier. And I want to thank you for sticking around to the end, and I'll see you next time.